All right, guys. So let's continue on with our stage 29 translations with part A of Masada translation. So Masada 1, part A. It's a rather long translation. Interesting history and background. We'll get into some of it here and some in the later videos. So let's jump into the translation. Ex carcere, prepositional phrase, ex plus ablative separation. So from the prison, ubi, where the captivi custodiebator, where the prisoners were being guarded. So custodiebator is obviously imperfect passive voice verb. Subject is captivi. So from the prison where the captives, where the prisoners were being guarded, tristes clamores audiebantur. Sad shouts, sad cries were being heard. Another imperfect subjunctive, imperfect passive voice verb right there. For enem, duai feminae, Judei, two Jewish women. And then we've got well, it's weirdly enough, the superstites is in apposition to femina. Right? These are both technically the subject of the main verb, which is lugebant. But this is an appositional phrase, the superstites eorum qui contra Romanos rebella verant. So inside this appositional phrase, we actually have a relative clause describing the superstites. You could say that it's equally describing the feminae because they're the same group. So superstites, survivors, super plus sto, to stand above. If you're standing above, you've survived, because presumably whoever has not survived is dead and lying on the ground. So very literal Roman is. So the survivors of those, genitive plural, qui contra Romanos rebella verant. I actually need to amend what I said. The qui clause is modifying the eorum, not superstites or feminae. So of those guys who had rebelled, pluperfect, right? Who had rebelled contra Romanos, against the Romans. Lugebant, main verb of this sentence, were lamenting or were mourning suam fortunam, their fate or their fortune. Romans are really, really big into fate and fortune. The wheel of fortune came from essentially their culture, them and the Greeks, not the game show, of course. So putting it all together, for two Jewish women, survivors of those who had rebelled against the Romans, were lamenting their fate. Now, just like we've seen ali, we see ultra. Now, ultra usually means the other, right? So we get words like alternate from this. When we see two ultras together, we usually will say one and the other, though. Just like when we see alii, we say some and others. So one was, so ultra erat, annus septuaginta annorum. So one was an old woman, septuaginta, 70 annorum of years, genitive plural. Now this is one of three separate ways that we're showing age, or at least this passage is demonstrating people's age, or phrases that can be used to describe age. So it literally means 70 of years. So one was an old woman, 70 of years. Another, ultra, matrona, trigenta annos nata. So this one it's an adjective modifying matrona. Nata is, it's from nascor, to be born, but usually we'll translate aged or by age, trigenta annos. So the whole thing would be, the other was, at this line of erat, a lady, an older woman, but not as old as the annos. So not a grandmother age, but a mother age. The other was a lady, 30 years old. We'll just translate trigenta annos nata as an idiom of 30 years old. Una. Now, una, we know that unus means one, but it's used here to mean altogether. Altogether, cum eis. So we've got an ablative plural right there with cum. So ablative association, altogether, with them, with those guys, those ones. In carcere, so ablative of location, in the jail. Erant, were, so imperfect from sum. Quinque liberi, so 5 children. 5 children. Liberi is another word for children. We've seen a bunch of them at this point. Quorum Simon natu maximus lacium matri et aviae fere temptabat. So this whole thing between quorum to the end of the sentence is a relative clause. Now we've seen that they're starting to use relative clauses with words besides just qui and quem. This is a genitive plural, so it's modifying the liberi. It's describing of these children. So of these children, Simon, Simon. We notice that words, names specifically that are not Roman, are usually not declined. With occasionally the exception being Greek words, and they're usually declined as Greek words. Most speakers of Latin would know Greek, especially if they were educated. But words like Simon or any of the words that are names that are biblical or Semitic, like David, for example, are not usually declined. No matter what they are, they're just David, and you have to figure out by context. So of whom, Simon, this is going to be the subject here, Simon, by birth, the eldest, Maximus. So this is another way to express age, and this is an ablative of an instrumental ablative. So we can just say natu Maximus is the eldest, of whom Simon was the eldest. So Simon is the subject of this verb temptabat, of whom Simon was attempting, imperfect, fere, superlative infinitive, to bring, and then the direct object is solacium. So comfort, if you will, was attempting to bring comfort. 2 datives, a dative of interest, presumably, to the mother, matri et aviae, and the grandmother. We could easily put in brackets to his mother and grandmother. Avia is another word for grandmother. So we've seen anus and avia here, both to describe old women. They're trying to differentiate your vocabulary. Now we're going into direct speech here. Mater noli lugere. So mater is going to be a vocative, and then noli is an imperative, which takes an infinitive. So it literally means not to mourn, but we don't translate it that way. Mother, don't lament, don't cry. Decorum est, impersonal construction. It is fitting. It is good. And then a dative, a reference for the Jewish people, for the Jews, praestare, and then decorum est, this impersonal construction, takes an infinitive. And this is glossed in your book as to show or display, but usually it also can mean to supersede or excel. Again, we say sto is the root word, and then we've got pri in front of it. We talked about pri in one of the previous translations. Pri is in front of, so to stand in front of, therefore both to show by being in front of, and also to stand in front of, in terms of if you're in front, you're probably superseding. You can translate it either way. So it is fitting for the Jews to display fortitudinem, strength or fortitude, in rebus adversis, in adverse things, or we could easily just translate it as in adversity. Next sentence, mater amplexa filium, so the mother, perfect passive participle, having embraced the son, or you could say her son, put it in brackets though, Another direct speech. Melius erat, inquit, cum patre vestro perire ab hinc annos novum. So, she said, it was better to die, to perish, cum patre vestro, so ablative of association, ab hinc annos novum. Now, ab hinc, they translate as go, adverbial, but it's literally from, and then hinc is usually a in place, but a place in time. From that time, 9 years ago. So novum annos. So putting it all together, it was better. It would have been better. It probably would be a good way to translate this, even though erat is not the subjunctive. When you're translating it, keep it literal, keep it in the indicative though. To perish with your father 9 years ago. More direct speech. Cur tum a morte abhorri. Why then did I abhor, or why did I shrink from death? Morte, ablative of separation, really goes with abhorio, because the ab is going to indicate that there should be an ablative there, to shrink from death. Cur vos servavi. Why did I save you? Both of these verbs, by the way, are perfect tense verbs. Why did I save you? Simon, so another nominative, his verbis commotus, haven't been moved by these words, instrumental ablatives right there. Perfect past participle modified. Simon, rogavit matrem, so perfect tense verb, asked the mother, quo modo, in what way? In what way? So you'd say how. This is another, it's really an locatival ablative in a way. In what way? Pater perissit. So the father, his father, had died. Pluperfect subjunctive. The reason this is pluperfect subjunctive is because it is indirect speech. Not just that, it is an indirect question indicated, introduced by Rogawit. So Simon asked his mother in what way his father had died. Atque, and quare, why. She is the implied subject. She had not narrated, another pluperfect subjunctive, the event, the thing, prius adverbial earlier. Notice that quare is another, it's adverbial, but it comes from qua and re, by what thing, literally. Eum oravit, so he begged her, perfect tense, ut explicaret omnia. So he begged her to explain the whole thing or everything. Imperfect subjunctive there with that ut. Sed tantus erat dolor matris ut primo nil dicere possit. But the dolor matris, the sadness of the mother, was so great that, okay, so we've got a result clause here, that at first primo, adverbial, but again, another ablative, probably of time. She was able to say nothing, imperfect subjunctive of possum. So she was not able to say anything, or was unable to say nothing. Ox immediately, cum se collegessit. So this cum is not a, this is not going with the say, it's not an ablative there, so it's not with herself, it's a temporal clause. You can tell because collegessit is a pluperfect subjunctive. So immediately, once, so we would say cum is once or after or when she had collected herself. Say is a reflexive pronoun there. Conversa ad liberos, having turned to, again, probably put in brackets, her children. perfect passive participle modifying, it would be modifying her as the subject. It's just that she's not there. So in a sense, that participial phrase, conversa ad liberos, is acting like the subject of the verb. And then direct speech, she said, de morte patris vestri. So about the death of your father. De takes an ablative. It's an orientational ablative, but it's when you're talking about a story, it kind of orients the story about what it's going to be about. Right? Speeches are always, or books are always about de. De rere natura means about the nature of things. So concerning the death, patris vestri, of your father, two genitive plurals, the death of your father, prius narrare noleban, I was not wanting, so right there, imperfect, to narrate this, we can imply this thing, prius, adverbial earlier, nay, now this is a negative purpose clause that it's introducing, so that you would also not so periretis, imperfect subjunctive right there, so that you would also not die. You could easily translate this in a very archaic way. It's often translated, negative purpose clauses are translated lest. So I was not wanting to tell this earlier, lest you also perish. And then we have this imitati exemplum eius. This is a participial phrase, perfect passive participle, modifying vos. So you all, this is the children she's talking to, having imitated exemplum eius, having imitated his example. So eius is a genitive right there. Nunc, now, tamen, however, audio, I dare, and then that's going to take prelative infinitive, a complementary infinitive, pot e facere, to reveal, I dare to reveal, totam rem, the whole thing, accusative direct object, to you, dative of, well, probably interest or disinterest, I don't know, it's relative at that point, for you, quod, because, we all, nos omnes, nominative subjects, sumus are morituri. Now, I think this is it's not the first time that we've seen this in the passages, but I'm going to point it out here. This is a future active participle. It means we all are about to die. Kras means tomorrow. It's adverbial. So that is all. That's that whole passage right there. If you have any questions, just send me an email or we'll talk about it in class or via Zoom. All right.